Dear colleagues, my name is Isabel Núñez. I'm a PhD in the University of Cadiz. I'm going to present a conference paper called Multiculturalism as Adolescents' First Preference for Acculturation in relation to Moroccan classmates of foreign language lessons after the financial crisis where a new communicative context is set up. Over recent decades, research into the nature of multicultural societies, which are increasingly common, has aroused interest in many disciplines, especially in relation to acculturation phenomena. Acculturation is a process involving psychological and behavioral changes that occur as a result of exposure to a different cultural group. Much research has focused on the acculturation attitudes towards the in-group and out-group of native and immigrant populations in Spain following the impact of the 2008 economic crisis and the appearance of new psychological and communicative behaviors. This phenomenon has had a significant impact on students' experiences during compulsory education at both elementary and secondary levels. Following Barry's in 2005 acculturation model, this study examined the acculturation profiles of host population secondary education students towards the Moroccan immigrant peers after the financial crisis in Spain by means of the newly developed National Adolescents Acculturation Preferences Scale, NAP hereafter. In the present research, Barry's 2005 model of acculturation was shown to be valid in relation to the attitudes of native post-secondary education students towards the immigrant population of Moroccan adolescents in southern Spain. We have presented a measurement instrument that attempts to identify the social and educational challenges that prompt cultural diversity, especially in secondary education setting after the economic crisis and in a setting where psychological changes have occurred in its wake. The NAP was found to have an adequate psychometric property. The domains in the NAP scale are attitudes toward in-group and out culture, cultural practices, and cultural affiliation, focusing in all cases on Moroccan immigrant students as the outgroup. Confirmatory factor analysis indicated that global variance was successfully explained by the two-factor instrument according to Barry's model. The factor explaining the largest proportion of the variance was the contact participation factor. The two dimensions of the NAP scales provide evidence in support of Barry's model of acculturation in relation to the host society. However, the strong correlation observed between the two dimensions adds some controversy as to the relationship between them. Other works has also suggested that the theoretical orthogonality of the dimensions proposed in Barry's model of acculturation doesn't hold up empirically, as in the case of the NAP scale. The lack of independence between the two factors may be attributable to the questionnaire format or the presence of a latent construct loading on both the dimensions. Regarding main results about type of intercultural relationship, multiculturalism was confirmed to be the most common strategy for native population students in secondary education in this study, as has been reported by other studies conducted before. Nonetheless, the present findings indicated that the next common strategy following multiculturalism was one of exclusion, which is a different result to those observed before the economic crisis, when assimilation was preferred by a large segment of the population. Consequently, regarding the proportions of acculturation profiles observed and the positive and significant relationship between the two dimensions of the NAP scale, the results of the present study suggest a more one-dimensional interpretation of acculturation profiles in an educational context. Clearly, the results of this research focuses on a dichotomy between multiculturalism on the one hand and exclusion, melting pot, and segregation strategies in the other, on the other hand. The results of the NAP scale in the present study indicated an alternative acculturation model to Barry's for the native population in educational context. This is based on multiculturalism versus maladaptive acculturation strategies such as exclusion, melting pot, and segregation strategies. However, this hypothesis should be validated in further research. Although The main focus of this study was on using the NAP scale to examine acculturation profiles in an educational context. The more interesting results were related to a possible multidimensional model of acculturation. Likewise, other variables relating to acculturation play an important role in interpersonal relationships in a multicultural context. We identify, on the one hand, interethnic in-group bias, self-esteem, and sympathy towards different ethnic and national groups as predictors of acculturation profile. On the other hand, school violence as a dependent variable. All of these were variables significantly associated with the acculturation profiles. Not only allows a better definitions of profiles, but also provides evidence that the present study has sufficient validity to identify the main axes that educational programs should seek to target in order to improve students' psychological acculturation in future. Finally, the results show that 2/3 of native students exhibited an attitude of multiculturalism toward Moroccan immigrant adolescents. These encouraging results suggest new possibilities and paths for acculturation relationships among young people. In a nutshell, the current study set out to sketch a unified model of native population acculturation profiles in an educational context based on the construction of a new instrument adapted to the target population of high school students and specifically aiming to measure their acculturation profiles with respect to Moroccan peers. As the findings make clear, the design of suitable educational programs is important for the improvement of relationships in multicultural settings. So this is the end of the conference paper. Thank you very much for your attention and hope you find interesting. Bye bye.